Dr. Elena Vasquez walked through the bright white halls of the UHMS Nightingale's Grace. Her soft shoes made no sound on the clean metal floors. Around her, nurses and doctors moved quickly but quietly between rooms. The hospital ship was huge, almost 2 miles long, with red crosses painted on every side. Everyone in the galaxy knew what those red crosses meant. They meant safety. They meant help. They meant no fighting was allowed here. Elena stopped at room 847. Inside, a young Zephyrian soldier lay on a medical bed. His insect-like body was covered in bandages. The Zephyrians looked like giant praying mantises, but Elena had learned they were gentle people who only fought because they had to. This one was barely old enough to hold a weapon. "How are you feeling today, Crix?" Elena asked in simple galactic standard. The translator box on her collar would help if needed. The young alien's compound eyes focused on her. "Better, Dr. Human Elena. The pain medicine works well." "When can I go home?" Elena checked his chart on her tablet. 2 more days. Your wing will be strong again soon." Crix made a chittering sound that meant happiness in his language. "Thank you. My hive mother will be so glad. She thought I would never fly again." Elena smiled and patted his arm carefully. Zephyrian skin was harder than human skin, but she had learned to be gentle anyway. "You will fly again. I promise." She moved to the next room. Here, 3 human soldiers shared space with 2 reptilian hegemony fighters. A month ago, these same groups had been shooting at each other on the planet Kepler-7. Now they played cards together while their wounds healed. Dr. V called out Sergeant Martinez, a human with a missing leg. "Tell Rodriguez here that aces beat kings in poker. These hegemony guys are learning the game, but Rodriguez is trying to cheat them." Elena laughed. "Aces do beat kings, Rodriguez. Play fair." One of the hegemony soldiers, who looked like a 7-foot-tall lizard, spoke in broken galactic standard. "Human games are strange, but fun. We play more when wounds heal. Yes, Dr. Female?" "Yes, Scarl. You can play all the poker you want when you get better." Elena made notes on her tablet. All 5 soldiers in this room would be walking again within the week. That made her happy. She continued her rounds. The Nightingale's Grace held 47,000 beings from 19 different species. Some were soldiers. Some were civilians caught in fighting. Some were refugees running from war zones. Elena and her team of 8,000 doctors and nurses treated them all the same. It did not matter what species they were. It did not matter which side they fought for. If someone was hurt, the humans would help them heal. Captain Torres found Elena in the main medical bay 2 hours later. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been commanding hospital ships for 15 years. Before that, he had been a fighter pilot. Elena often wondered how someone could go from making war to saving lives. But Torres was the best hospital ship captain in the human fleet. "Elena, we have a situation," Torres said quietly. Long-range sensors picked up a distress signal. Hegemony frigate, badly damaged, drifting in space about 6 hours from here. Elena looked up from the medical supplies she was counting. "How many aboard?" "Unknown. The signal is weak. Could be anywhere from 50 to 300 crew members." Torres paused. "I know what you're thinking. We're already at full capacity. But we don't leave people to die in space," Elena finished. "That's not who we are." Torres nodded. "That's what I told the bridge crew when they asked. Some of them are worried. A damaged hegemony ship in this sector could be a trap. The war hasn't been going well for them lately. They might be getting desperate." Elena set down her tablet. "Captain, in 2 years we have saved over 40,000 lives. Humans, Zephyrians, hegemony, even some of those crystal beings from the outer rim. Not once has anyone attacked a hospital ship. Not once. The galactic conventions are clear. Medical ships are neutral, or off limits. I know, Torres said. And you're right. We have to respond. I just wanted to make sure you and your staff are ready for a big influx of patients. If that frigate is as damaged as the signal suggests, we might get some really bad cases. Elena was already moving toward the medical prep stations. I'll alert all departments. How long until we reach them? 5 hours and 43 minutes at current speed. Elena started making calls on her communicator. Within minutes, the entire medical staff of the Nightingale's Grace was preparing for emergency operations. Operating rooms were cleared and cleaned. Blood banks were organized by species type. The pharmaceutical department began mixing pain, medications that would work on hegemony biology. Elena found herself thinking about her first day aboard a hospital ship. She had been fresh out of medical school on Earth, young and eager to help people. Her first patient had been a hegemony prisoner of war who had lost both arms in a plasma blast. She remembered being nervous. The hegemony were humanity's enemies. They had killed millions of humans in this war. But when she looked at that wounded soldier, all she saw was someone in pain who needed help. She spent 16 hours in surgery, rebuilding his arms with cybernetic implants. When he woke up and could move his fingers again, he cried. Elena learned that day that tears looked the same whether they came from human eyes or hegemony eyes. The next few hours passed quickly. The Nightingale's Grace changed course toward the distress signal. Elena walked through the ship, checking on patients and making sure her staff was ready. In the children's ward, young beings from 6 different species played together with toys donated by families across human space. In the rehabilitation center, former enemies worked together, doing physical therapy exercises. This was what Elena loved most about hospital ships. Here, there was no war. There were no enemies. There were only patients who needed care and medical staff who provided it. The Nightingale's Grace was like a tiny island of peace floating through the darkness of space. As they got closer to the damaged frigate, Elena joined Captain Torres on the bridge. Through the main view screen, they could see the hegemony ship tumbling slowly through space. Hull breaches were visible along its side. Atmosphere leaked out in frozen streams that sparkled in the starlight. Sensors show 78 life signs. Aboard, reported the scanning officer. Some are very weak. Torres opened a communication channel. Hegemony vessel, this is Captain Torres of the hospital ship Nightingale's Grace. We are responding to your distress call. Prepare to receive medical assistance. A crackling voice answered in accented galactic standard. Human ship, this is Commander Vash of the frigate Talonstrike. We have many wounded. Our medical bay was destroyed. We we need help. Elena stepped forward. Commander Vash, this is Dr. Vasquez. We're preparing to take your wounded aboard for treatment. How many need immediate surgery? 37 are critical. Dr. Human, my ship fought yours at Rigel last month. Why do you help us? Elena looked at Torres, who nodded. Because that's what we do, Commander. Prepare your wounded for transport. We'll have them all aboard within 2 hours. As the transport shuttles launched from the Nightingale's Grace, Elena felt the same sense of purpose she always felt when helping those in need. This was why she became a doctor. This was why humanity built hospital ships instead of just more weapons. In a galaxy full of war and hatred, someone had to choose to heal instead of hurt. She had no way of knowing that this choice, this act of compassion, would soon bring darkness to the stars. The first shuttle from the damaged hegemony frigate docked with the Nightingale's Grace 3 hours later. Elena waited in the shuttle bay with 20 nurses and 6 emergency medical teams. The bay doors opened with a soft hiss, and wounded Hegemony soldiers began coming out on stretchers. Elena had seen many wounded beings in her 2 years on hospital ships. But these cases were worse than usual. Burns covered most of their reptilian skin. Some had lost limbs. Others struggled to breathe through damaged lungs. The worst cases went straight to surgery. The others went to the intensive care wards. "Doctor, this one is barely alive," called Nurse Patterson. She was wheeling a young hegemony female toward the elevator. The soldier's breathing was weak, and her pulse was failing. Elena ran alongside the stretcher. "Get her to OR 7. I'll prep for emergency surgery." She looked down at the wounded soldier. Despite the burns and injuries, Elena could see she was very young. Maybe 19 or 20 in human years. As they rushed through the halls, other patients watched from their rooms. The human soldiers who had been playing cards earlier stood at their doorway. Sergeant Martinez balanced on his crutches. "Doc, you need any help?" he asked. "I know basic field medicine." "Thank you, but stay in your room and rest. Your leg needs time to heal." Elena appreciated his offer, but rules were rules. Patients needed to focus on getting better. The surgery took 4 hours. Elena and her team replaced damaged organs, repaired torn blood vessels, and treated severe burns. When the young hegemony soldier finally opened her eyes, Elena was checking her. Vital signs. Where am I? The soldier whispered in Galactic Standard. "You're safe. You're aboard a human hospital ship. My name is Dr. Vasquez." Elena spoke softly and kept her movements slow. Many hegemony patients were frightened when they first woke up on a human ship. The young soldier tried to sit up and fell back with a gasp of pain. "Humans, but we are enemies. Why do you help me?" Elena had answered this question many times before. "Because you're hurt, and we're doctors. That's all that matters here." Tears began running down the soldier's scaled cheeks. "My name is Sasha. I was a communications officer on the Talon strike. The explosion killed most of my unit. I thought I would die in space." "You're not going to die, Sasha. You're going to heal and go home to your family." Elena checked the monitors around the bed. Everything looked good. "Rest now. The pain medication will help you sleep." Elena left Sasha's room and went to check on the other new patients. Commander Vash, the captain of the damaged frigate, was in room 1205. He had a broken leg and some internal injuries, but nothing life-threatening. When Elena entered his room, he was staring out the window at the stars. "Commander, how are you feeling?" Elena asked. Vash turned to look at her. He was older than most hegemony soldiers, with scars covering his arms and neck. "Dr. Human, I must ask you something. Why does your species do this? Why do you save your enemies?" Elena sat down in the chair next to his bed. This was not a medical question, but she could see he really wanted to understand. "Because we believe all life has value. It doesn't matter what species someone is or what uniform they wear. When someone is hurt, we help them. But we have killed many humans. I myself have destroyed 3 human ships. Why do you not hate us?" Elena thought about her answer carefully. Some humans do hate the hegemony. War makes people angry and afraid. But hatred doesn't heal wounds or save lives. We chose to build hospital ships instead of more weapons because we believe healing is better than hurting. Vash was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "You are a strange species, humans. In all my years of war, I have never seen enemies care for each other like this." "Maybe that's why this war needs to end," Elena said. "There's been enough death on all sides." Elena continued her rounds. The medical bays were now completely full. 78 hegemony soldiers joined. The thousands of other patients aboard the Nightingale's Grace The human medical staff worked without complaint, treating everyone equally. In the children's ward, a young hegemony boy played games with human and Zephyrian children. None of them cared about the war. They just wanted to have fun. Captain Torres found Elena in the medical supply room that evening. She was counting bandages and updating inventory lists. The work never stopped on a hospital ship. The Talon strike is beyond repair, Torres reported. We'll have to take all the survivors back to the nearest neutral station for repatriation. That's Kepler Station, about 8 days from here. Elena nodded. The wounded will need that time to heal anyway. Some of them won't be ready to travel for at least a week. There's something else, Torres said. His voice sounded worried. Long-range communications picked up some chatter. Hegemony fleet movements in this sector. They might be looking for their missing frigate. Will that be a problem? Elena asked. Hospital ships are neutral. They can't attack us under galactic law, I know. But with the war going badly for them, some hegemony commanders might be getting desperate. Desperate people sometimes do stupid things. Elena set down her tablet. Captain, we've been doing this for 2 years. No one has ever attacked a hospital ship. The Red Crosses mean something to every civilized species in the galaxy. Torres looked out the small window at the stars. I hope you're right, Elena. I really do. 2 days later, Elena was in surgery room 3, replacing a damaged heart valve when the alarm started. Red lights flashed throughout the ship, and a recorded voice announced, "All stations, alert status." This is not a drill. Elena looked up at her surgical team. Keep working. Someone needs this valve or they'll die. Captain Torres will handle whatever is happening. But even as she said it, Elena felt worried. Alert status meant possible danger. Hospital ships almost never went to alert status. The surgery took another hour. When Elena finally left the operating room, Nurse Patterson was waiting for her in the hallway. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking. Doctor, you need to get to the bridge right now, Patterson said. Elena pulled off her surgical gloves. What's happening? Hegemony battle fleet. They found us. Elena ran through the corridors toward the bridge. Other crew members were moving quickly but calmly. The Nightingale's Grace had practiced emergency procedures many times. Everyone knew their jobs. When Elena reached the bridge, she saw Captain Torres standing at the main view screen. Outside in space, 20 large hegemony warships surrounded the hospital ship. Their weapons were powered up and pointed at the Nightingale's Grace. Captain, what do they want? Elena asked. I don't know yet. They're not responding to our communications. Torres turned to his communications officer. Try again. Make sure they understand we're a medical vessel. Hegemony fleet, this is the hospital ship Nightingale's Grace. The officer spoke into his microphone. We are a medical vessel operating under galactic convention. We have wounded from all species aboard, including your own people. Please respond. For several minutes, there was only silence. Then a harsh voice came through the speakers. Human medical ship. This is Admiral Crexthal of the Hegemony Third Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded. Torres stepped forward. Admiral, we are a hospital ship. We have red crosses clearly displayed. We have 78 of your own wounded aboard receiving medical treatment. We are protected under galactic medical conventions. Admiral Crexthal's voice was cold and angry. Conventions are for the weak. You humans use these hospital ships to spy on our fleets and rescue your own people while claiming neutrality. No more. Elena felt her heart start beating faster. Something was very wrong here. Captain, they can't seriously be thinking of attacking us. Admiral, Torres spoke into the communicator again. I'm sending you our patient manifest. 78 hegemony soldiers, 400 Zephyrian civilians, Over 2,000 human refugees and thousands of others from 17 different species. This is a medical facility, not a military target. Enough talking, Admiral Krexthul replied. You have 5 minutes to surrender your ship and all personnel. If you refuse, we will destroy you. Elena looked around the bridge. The crew members were staring at their stations in shock. No one could believe what they were hearing. Hospital ships had been safe for over 100 years. The red crosses were sacred to every species in the galaxy. Captain, Elena said quietly, we have to try to evacuate the patients. Torres shook his head. 47,000 beings? Our life pods could maybe hold 5,000. And the hegemony? Ships would just destroy the pods anyway. The communications officer looked up from his station. Captain, I'm getting emergency calls from all over the ship. Patients are scared. Some of the hegemony wounded are trying to contact their fleet to tell them this is really a hospital ship. Put Commander Vash on the main channel, Torres ordered. A moment later, Commander Vash's voice came through the bridge speakers. He was speaking in the hegemony language, but the translators converted his words to galactic standard. Admiral Krexthul, this is Commander Vash of the Talon Strike. These humans saved my crew. They are treating our wounded with honor. You cannot attack a medical ship. Admiral Krexthul's reply was filled with anger. You are a fool, Vash. These humans make you weak with their false kindness. Strength is all that? The timer on the bridge screen reached 0. Elena held her breath and waited. For a moment, there was only silence in space. Then the first plasma bolt hit the Nightingale's Grace. The ship shook violently. Emergency lights came on as the main. Power flickered. Elena grabbed onto a support rail to keep from falling. Through the bridge windows, she could see more flashes of light as the hegemony fleet opened fire. Shields down to 60%, reported the tactical officer. They're targeting our engines and life support systems. Captain Torres was speaking rapidly into his communicator. All stations, this is the captain. Hospital ship Nightingales. Grace is under attack by hegemony forces. We are a medical vessel with 47,000 patients and medical staff aboard. Mayday, mayday, mayday. Another series of explosions rocked the ship. Elena could hear alarms going off throughout the vessel. Her communicator started buzzing with emergency calls from the medical bays. Dr. Vasquez, we need you in Surgery Bay 7, pinned Nurse Patterson's voice. The last hit damaged the ceiling and debris, injured several patients. Elena looked at Captain Torres. I have to go help the wounded. Torres nodded grimly. Go. Do what you can. We'll try to keep this ship together as long as possible. Elena ran through corridors filled with smoke and flashing red lights. The ship shook again, and she stumbled, catching herself against a wall. Other crew members were running past her, some carrying medical supplies, others helping patients who had been thrown from their beds. When she reached Surgery Bay 7, Elena saw the damage immediately. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, and metal beams had fallen on to 3 patient beds. 2 Zephyrian refugees and 1 human soldier were trapped underneath. Help me lift this beam, Elena called to 2 orderlies who were standing nearby. Together, they managed to free the human soldier. His leg was broken, but he was alive. Doc, forget about me, the soldier gasped. Help the bug people first. They look worse. Elena was already moving to check on the Zephyrians. One was unconscious, but breathing. The other was awake, but had a piece of metal stuck in his chest. Elena knew that moving it wrong could kill him. Get me a surgical kit and some plasma, she called out. I need to operate right here. As Elena worked to save the wounded Zephyrian, the ship continued to shake from weapon impacts. She tried to focus only on her patient, but she could hear the sounds of destruction all around them. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the terrible sound of hull metal tearing apart. 20 minutes later, she had stabilized the Zephyrian and was working on the unconscious one when her communicator buzzed again. All medical staff, this is the captain. Torres's voice was strained. We've lost main power. Life support is running on backup systems. The hegemony fleet is preparing for a final attack. If you have something to say to your families, record it now. Elena stopped what she was doing. Around her, the other medical staff were looking at each other with fear and sadness. They all knew what Torres was really saying. The Nightingale's Grace was going to be destroyed. Elena thought about calling her parents on Earth, but she realized the communication systems were probably damaged. Instead, she looked at the patients around her. Even now, with death approaching, they were all she cared about. Listen to me, she said to the medical staff in the room. We keep working until the end. These people trusted us to take care of them. We don't stop now. The others nodded and went back to treating patients. Elena moved to the next bed, where young Sasha, the hegemony communications officer she had saved 3 days ago, was sitting up and looking scared. Dr. Elena, what is happening? Sasha asked. Why do our ships attack you? Elena sat down next to Sasha's bed. She decided to tell the truth. Your admiral thinks we're spies. He's going to destroy the ship. Sasha's eyes went wide. But that is against all laws. Hospital ships are sacred. No one attacks medical vessels. I know, Elena said softly. Some people forget what's right when they're angry. Sasha started crying. This is my fault. If we had not sent that distress signal, you would not have. Come to help us. You would be safe. Elena took Sasha's hand. Don't think that way. We came to help because that's who we are. We chose to save your lives. That choice was right, even if this is the result. Another massive explosion shook the ship. This one was different. Elena could hear the sound of atmosphere escaping into space. Hull breach alarms started wailing throughout the medical bay. Emergency bulkheads are sealing, announced the ship's computer. Multiple hull breaches detected. Estimated time to catastrophic failure, 15 minutes. Elena looked around the medical bay. There were over 300 patients in this section. Alone, most were too injured to move. Even if the life pods were working, there was no way to evacuate everyone in 15 minutes. Alana's communicator buzzed one more time. This time, it was a ship-wide announcement from Captain Torres. All crew and passengers of the UHMS Nightingale's Grace, this is Captain Torres. I want you to know that serving with all of you has been the greatest honor of my life. For 2 years, we have saved over 40,000 lives together. We have shown the galaxy that healing is stronger than hatred. We have proven that compassion can exist even in the darkest times of war. Elena could hear explosions getting closer. Emergency lights were flickering as power systems failed throughout the ship. Torres continued his announcement. I am transmitting our final log and patient records on all frequencies. The galaxy needs to know what happened here. They need to know that a hospital ship full of patients from 19 different species was destroyed while trying to save lives. Elena stood up and walked to the intercom system in the medical bay. She pressed the button to speak to the whole ship. This is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I want everyone to know that you are all heroes. Patients, medical staff, ship crew, everyone. You showed that different species can live together in peace. You showed that enemies can become friends when they focus on healing instead of hurting. Around the medical bay, patients and staff were listening to her words. Humans, Zephyrians, hegemony soldiers, and beings from a dozen other species all faced their final moments together. The beings who are attacking us think that kindness is weakness, Elena continued. They think that saving lives makes us soft. They are wrong. Our compassion is our strength. Our mercy is our power. They can destroy this ship, but they cannot destroy what we represent. The ship shook one final time. This explosion was much larger than the others. Alina could see through the medical bay windows that sections of the ship were breaking apart. Debris floated past the windows, glowing from the heat of plasma fire. Elena thought about her first day aboard a hospital ship, when she helped rebuild the arms of a wounded hegemony soldier. She thought about all the lives saved, all the families reunited, all the enemies who became friends in the healing wards of medical vessels. She thought about Admiral Krexthill, somewhere out there in the darkness, watching a hospital ship die. She wondered if he felt proud of his victory, or if somewhere deep inside, he knew he had crossed a line that should never be crossed. The lights went out in the medical bay. Emergency power was failing throughout the ship. Elena could hear the sound of metal groaning as the ship's structure began to collapse. She sat down next to Sasha's bed and took the young hegemony soldier's hand. "I'm scared," Sasha whispered. "So am I," Elena replied. "But we're not alone. We're all here together." In the darkness, Elena could hear voices from all over the medical bay, different species speaking different languages, but all saying the same things. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I love you. Goodbye." Elena closed her eyes and thought about Earth. She thought about the blue oceans and green forests where humanity first learned to heal instead of hurt. She thought about the hospitals and medical schools where young humans learned that every life has value. Somewhere far away on Earth, people were living normal lives. They had no idea that in the darkness of space, a hospital ship was dying. They had no idea that 47,000 beings were about to become martyrs for the cause of compassion. But Elena knew that someday, somehow, Earth would learn what happened to the Nightingale's Grace. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same. The final explosion came without warning. Elena felt the ship breaking apart around her, felt the artificial gravity failing, felt the last of the atmosphere rushing out into space. In her final moments, she held tight to Sasha's hand and whispered a promise into the void. "They will remember us. They will remember what we stood for. And they will make sure this never happens again." Then there was only silence in the darkness between the stars. The news reached Earth 3 days later. An automated message pod from the Nightingale's Grace had escaped the destruction and jumped through hyperspace, carrying Captain Torres's final transmission. When it arrived at Sol Station, the duty officer who received it thought there had been a mistake. Hospital ships didn't get destroyed. It was impossible. It was against every law of civilized warfare, but the message was real. The recording was clear. 47,000 beings, including 8,000 human medical personnel, had been murdered while trying to save lives. The pod also carried the complete patient records, showing exactly who had been aboard the ship when it died. Within 6 hours, the news was on every communication network in human space. Videos of the attack spread across billions of screens. People watched Admiral Krexthill's fleet destroy a clearly marked hospital ship. They heard Dr. Elena Vasquez's final words about compassion and strength. They saw the Red Crosses being torn apart by plasma fire. President Sarah Chun sat in her office in Geneva, watching the recordings for the 5th time. She was not related to Admiral Sarah Chun of the Sol Defense Fleet, but they shared the same cold anger as they watched innocent people die. Around the table sat the other members of the Terran Federation Council. None of them spoke for a long time. "How many humans are demanding war?" asked Defense Minister Park. "All of them," replied Communications Director Rodriguez. "Every single poll shows the same thing. 97% support immediate military action. The other 3% haven't seen the videos yet." President Chun turned off the display, showing the destruction of the Nightingale's Grace. "What about our allies? The Zephyrians, the Centauri Republic, the others? They're terrified. said Foreign Minister Okafor. "Not of the hegemony, of us. They've never seen humans this angry before. Some of them are asking if we're going to declare total war." President Chun was quiet for several minutes. She thought about Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had spent 2 years saving lives from 19 different species. She thought about Captain Torres, who had chosen to rescue enemies instead of leaving them to die in space. She thought about the children in the hospital ship's pediatric ward. "Get me Admiral Chun," President Chun said finally, "and contact the Strategic Planning Division. Tell them I want Option Omega on my desk in 2 hours." Defense Minister Park looked up sharply. "Madam President, Option Omega is total war authorization. Are you sure?" "They attacked a hospital ship, Minister. They murdered doctors and children and wounded soldiers under medical protection. Yes, I'm sure." 2 hours later, Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the Underground Strategic Command center beneath the Swiss Alps. She had been expecting this call ever since the news broke. Around her, dozens of officers worked at computer stations that controlled the entire human military across 50 star systems. "Admiral," President Chun's image appeared on the main screen. "I'm authorizing Option Omega, effective immediately. You have complete authority to use any means necessary to end this war." Admiral Chun nodded. She had hoped this day would never come, but she had spent 20 years preparing for it anyway. "Understood, Madam President. How much of our true strength am I authorized to reveal?" "All of it, Admiral. Show the galaxy what humanity is really capable of when we stop holding back." Admiral Chun turned to her staff officers. "Activate all strategic reserve fleets. Bring the outer system platforms online. Contact the black sites and tell them to begin full production. And get me a direct line to Admiral Martinez aboard the Retribution." Across human space, things began moving that had been hidden for decades. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, rock formations that looked natural suddenly opened up to reveal massive shipyards. Ships that had been disguised as mining vessels shed their fake hull plating and showed their true nature as destroyers. And cruisers. On Luna, beneath the surface mining colonies, weapons factories that had been building farming equipment switched to their real purpose. The same thing happened on Europa, Titan, and hidden bases in the York Cloud. Within hours, the human war machine was operating at full capacity for the first time in over a century. Admiral Chun's first target was the hegemony supply lines. She sent stealth ships to every major shipping route the enemy used. But these weren't normal attacks. The human ships didn't just destroy the supply convoys. They made them disappear completely. The hegemony commanders noticed the pattern after a week. 37 supply fleets had simply vanished. No distress calls, no debris fields, no survivors. The ships were there one moment and gone the next, as if they had never existed at all. Admiral Crexthill, the commander who had destroyed the Nightingale's Grace, was beginning to feel worried. He had expected the humans to attack his fleet directly, seeking revenge. Instead, they seemed to be attacking everywhere, except where he was. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving distress calls from 17 different sectors. Our supply lines are being cut, but our scouts can't find any human fleets." Crexthill studied the tactical display. Red marks showed where hegemony ships had disappeared. The pattern made no sense. How could the humans be attacking in so many places at once? "Sir," another officer spoke up nervously, "intelligence reports that human ship production has increased by 800% in the last 2 weeks. They seem to have shipyards we didn't know about." Crexthill felt a cold sensation in his stomach. 800%? How is that possible? "We don't know, sir. Some of our spies are reporting that the humans have been hiding their true industrial capacity for decades. The ships we've been fighting might only be a small part of their real fleet. On the planet Kepler-5, a hegemony military base went offline. In the middle of the night, when morning came, the entire facility was gone. Not destroyed, gone. The buildings, the landing pads, the weapons storage, everything had been disassembled down to the molecular level. In place of the base was a perfect square of empty ground and a single message written in the dirt. You attacked a hospital ship. Similar incidents happened across hegemony space. Military bases didn't explode or burn. They simply ceased to exist. Defense satellites vanished from orbit. Command centers were found empty, with all equipment removed and all personnel missing. The missing soldiers were later found on neutral planets, unconscious but unharmed, with no memory of how they got there. The hegemony commanders tried to fight back, but they couldn't find targets. Human fleets appeared and disappeared like ghosts. They would attack a hegemony position, destroy everything military, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. But they never harmed civilians or medical facilities. Admiral Krexthul received new orders to retreat to the core hegemony worlds and establish defensive positions. But when his fleet tried to jump to hyperspace, nothing happened. Their navigation computers showed error messages they had never seen before. "Sir," his navigation officer said with a shaking voice, "our hyperspace drives aren't working." "None of them. It's like something is blocking our jump calculations." Across the galaxy, every hegemony ship found itself trapped in normal space. They could use their regular engines, but they couldn't jump to hyperspace. The humans had somehow cut off their ability to travel between star systems quickly. Meanwhile, human fleets moved freely, appearing wherever they wanted. It became clear that humanity had developed technology far beyond what they had shown during the war. Stealth systems that made ships completely invisible. Weapons that could dismantle matter at the atomic level. Computer viruses that could shut down enemy systems from light years away. The Zephyrian Council called an emergency meeting with human representatives. Ambassador Jackson met with the insectoid leaders in their crystal palace on Zephyr Prime. "Ambassador Jackson," spoke High Counselor Azak, "your species frightens us. This technology you are using, this level of warfare, we have never seen anything like it. How long have you been hiding these capabilities?" Jackson sat quietly for a moment before answering. "Since we first made contact with other species, we've been hiding about 90% of our military strength. We wanted to be seen as equals, not threats. We wanted to build friendships, not fear. But why hide so much? Because we know what we're capable of when we're really angry. Humans evolved on a death world, Counselor. We survived ice ages, plagues, asteroid impacts, and thousands of wars among ourselves. When we finally got to space, we decided to use our skills for exploration and science instead of conquest." Jackson activated a holographic display showing human space. "Every mining facility you've seen is actually a shipyard. Every research station is a weapons laboratory. Every colony ship carries enough firepower to destroy a moon. We've been preparing for a war we hoped would never come." High Counselor Zach's compound eyes focused on the display. "And now that war has come? Now you're seeing what humans do when someone attacks our doctors and children. The hegemony crossed a line that should never be crossed. They're going to learn why hospital ships were safe for 100 years, because everyone was afraid of. What would happen if they attacked one?" Back in hegemony space, Admiral Krexthul was receiving reports that made no sense. 3 entire star systems had gone dark, not destroyed. Admiral Krexthul stared at the human ships surrounding his fleet. His hands shook as he reached for the communications console. He had spent his entire life believing that the hegemony was the strongest military force in the galaxy. Now he understood how wrong he had been. "This is Admiral Krexthil." He spoke into the microphone. I surrender my fleet to human forces." Within minutes, human boarding parties were moving through every hegemony ship, but they didn't come as conquerors. They came as police officers, carrying arrest warrants and lists of charges. Every hegemony officer who had participated in attacking the hospital ship was taken into custody for war crimes. Krexthil himself was brought aboard Admiral Chun's flagship, the Retribution. The human admiral was waiting for him in a conference room that looked more like a courtroom than a military meeting space. "Admiral Krexthil," Admiral Chun said as two human guards brought him in. "You are under arrest for the murder of 47,000 non-combatants, violation of medical, neutrality laws, and crimes against sentient beings." Krexthil had expected to be shot or thrown into a prison cell. Instead, he was given a chair and a glass of water. A human lawyer sat across from him, ready to explain his rights under galactic law. "I don't understand," Krexthil said. "Your people want revenge. Why do you follow legal procedures?" Admiral Chun sat down across from him. "Because we're not you, Admiral. We don't abandon our principles when we're angry. Dr. Elena Vasquez died believing that every life has value. We're not going to dishonor her memory by becoming murderers ourselves." The trial took place on the neutral station at Kepler Prime, with judges from 7 different species. The evidence was overwhelming. The humans presented recordings of the attack, patient manifests proving the ship's medical status, and testimony from survivors who had been found in escape pods. Commander Vosh, the hegemony officer whose ship had been rescued by the Nightingale's Grace, testified against his own admiral. "The humans saved my crew's lives," he said to the court. "They treated our wounded with honor and kindness." Admiral Krexthil destroyed a ship full of healers and patients. He brought shame to the hegemony military. The trial lasted 3 weeks. When it ended, Admiral Krexthil was sentenced to life in prison. But that was not the end of the human response to the hospital ship attack. Admiral Chun had been busy while the trial proceeded. Human fleets had surrounded every major hegemony world, but they hadn't attacked the planets. Instead, they had done something much more effective. They had shut down all technology on the surface. On Hegemony Prime, the capital world of the Coalition, people woke up one morning to find that nothing electronic worked. No computers, no communication devices, no vehicles, no power plants. The humans had used some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon that disabled every piece of technology on the planet without harming any living beings. The hegemony government tried to restore power, but every time they brought a system online, it would shut down again within minutes. It became clear that the humans were actively preventing any technology from working on hegemony. Worlds. President Vexstar of the Hegemony Coalition sent a message to Earth using an old radio transmitter from their pre-space era. "What do you want from us?" the message asked. "Name your terms." President Chun's response was broadcast across the galaxy. "We want justice for the Nightingale's Grace. We want the hegemony government to dissolve and allow its member species to choose their own futures. We want every military leader who supported attacking medical ships to face trial. And we want guarantees that this will never happen again." The hegemony leadership refused. They called the human demands unreasonable and threatened to fight until the last hegemony soldier was dead. The humans' response was swift and terrible. They didn't attack hegemony military forces or civilian populations. Instead, they attacked the government itself. Every communication network that connected hegemony worlds was severed. Every government building was emptied of personnel and equipment. Every military command center simply stopped existing. Within a month, the Hegemony Coalition government had effectively vanished. Without communications or central command, the various species that made up the coalition began making their own decisions. Some chose to surrender to human forces. Others declared independence and asked for protection from Earth, not the reptilian Saurian people, who had been forced to join the hegemony 50 years earlier, sent a delegation to Earth. "We never wanted this war," their ambassador explained to the Terran Federation Council. "Our people were conquered and forced to fight. We want peace with humanity." Similar delegations arrived from 6 other species that had been part of the hegemony coalition. It became clear that many of the coalition's member races had been held together by fear rather than loyalty. But the humans weren't finished. Admiral Chun had one more target: the military leaders who had created the culture that led to attacking a hospital ship. She began what history would later call the night raids. Human special forces teams appeared without warning on dozens of hegemony worlds. They didn't attack civilian areas or cause collateral damage. Instead, they surgically removed specific individuals from their homes and brought them to face trial for war crimes. General Thakmer, who had written the military doctrine that called medical ships legitimate targets in total war, was taken from his private estate on Hegemony Prime. Admiral Sekven, who had trained young officers that mercy is weakness, was captured from his vacation home on a distant colony world. Each raid was perfectly planned and executed. The humans would appear, take only their target, and disappear again within minutes. No guards were killed, no buildings were damaged, no innocent people were harmed. But the message was clear. Nowhere in the galaxy was safe for those who had supported attacking healers. The psychological effect on the remaining hegemony leadership was devastating. They realized that the humans could reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. The technology that had kept them in power for decades was useless against human capabilities they had never imagined. 1 year after the destruction of the Nightingales, Grace, the last remnants of the Hegemony Coalition government, officially surrendered. The war was over, but the galaxy had changed forever. Admiral Chun stood in the memorial hall on Earth, looking at a wall covered with the names of everyone who had died aboard the hospital ship. Dr. Elena Vasquez's name was at the top of the list, followed by Captain Torres and 8,000 other medical personnel who had died trying to save lives. "Admiral," President Chun said as she joined her at the memorial wall, "the Zephyrian Council is asking if we plan to keep our expanded military active. They're worried about human intentions." Admiral Chun touched Dr. Vasquez's name on the wall. "Tell them we're returning to our previous force levels. We never wanted to be a military superpower, Madam President. We built these capabilities to protect ourselves and our principles. Now that the threat is gone, we can go back to building hospitals instead of warships. And if someone threatens our medical ships again?" Admiral Chun turned away from the wall. "Then they'll learn the same lesson the hegemony learned. Humans protect healers. We always have, and we always will." 6 months later, the first new human hospital ship launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. It was named the UHMS Elena Vasquez, and it carried the most advanced medical equipment in the galaxy. On its hull, painted in letters large enough to be seen from orbit, were the words, "In memory of those who chose to heal." The ship's first mission was to provide medical aid to refugee camps on former hegemony worlds, where beings displaced by the war were still struggling to rebuild their lives. The crew included humans, Zephyrians, reformed hegemony personnel, and members of 12 other species. Dr. James Kim, the ship's chief medical officer, walked through the halls of the Elena Vasquez on its maiden voyage. The corridors looked exactly like those of the Nightingale's Grace, with the same white walls and Red Cross symbols that had marked human medical vessels for over a century. In the children's ward, young beings from half a dozen species played together while recovering from injuries. In the surgical bays, human doctors worked alongside alien colleagues to save lives. In the rehabilitation centers, former enemies helped each other learn to walk again. It was exactly what Dr. Elena Vasquez would have wanted. But there was one difference between this hospital ship and its predecessor. Hidden throughout the Elena Vasquez were defensive systems that could protect the ship from any attack. Stealth generators that could make it invisible. Shield systems that could deflect the most powerful weapons. And if all else failed, enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. The humans had learned their lesson too. They would continue to heal, continue to show mercy, continue to save lives regardless of species or allegiance. But they would never again allow healers to die defenseless in the darkness between the stars. As the Elena Vasquez jumped into hyperspace toward its first mission, a message was broadcast on all galactic frequencies. It was a recording of Dr. Elena Vasquez's final transmission from the dying Nightingale's grace. Our compassion is our strength. Our mercy is our power. They can destroy this ship, but they cannot destroy what we represent. The message ended with new words, added by the Terran Federation Council. The small human probe drifted through space like a lost child. It had been traveling for 3 months since leaving Earth's solar system. The metal cylinder was no bigger than a school bus, packed with cameras and computers. Its mission was simple: find new worlds and take pictures. Captain Sarah Chun watched the probe's data stream on her monitor at Mission Control in Houston. Everything looked normal until the readings went crazy. The probe had found something impossible. Space itself seemed to bend and twist around a massive structure that shouldn't exist. "Ma'am, you need to see this," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from his station. His voice shook with excitement and fear. Sarah rushed over to his screen. What she saw made her heart stop. The probe's cameras showed a space station bigger than Earth's moon. It was covered in lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Strange ships moved around it, like metal fish swimming in an ocean of stars. "Are we seeing this right?" Sarah asked. She had trained for first contact scenarios, but this was beyond anything they had imagined. The answer came faster than anyone expected. The probe's radio crackled to life with a voice speaking perfect English. "Human vessel, you have entered Galactic Council space without permission. Prepare to receive an official communication." Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for the microphone. "This is Earth Mission Control. We come in peace." "Your intentions are noted, but irrelevant," the voice replied coldly. "A representative will arrive at your homeworld in 72 standard hours. Prepare your leaders for an important message." The transmission ended. The probe's cameras showed one of the strange ships breaking away from the station. It was heading toward Earth at impossible speed. Sarah grabbed the red phone that connected her directly to the president. "Sir, we have a situation." 2 days later, the alien ship appeared above Earth, like a dark cloud blotting out the sun. It was 3 miles long and shaped like a crystal teardrop. No weapons were visible, but the ship's presence made every human on the planet feel small and helpless. The United Earth Assembly gathered in emergency session. Presidents, prime ministers, and world leaders filled the Great Hall in New York. Outside, billions of people watched their screens, waiting to learn humanity's fate. The alien ship sent down a small craft that landed on the assembly building's roof. From it stepped a creature that looked almost human, but wrong in subtle ways. Its skin was pale blue, its eyes were silver, and it moved with the grace of someone who had lived for centuries. High Arbitrator Kethvar walked into the assembly hall, wearing robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, a translator device. Around his neck turned his words into every human language at once. "I am Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire, speaking for the Galactic Council," he announced. His voice echoed in the silent hall. "For 50,000 years, we have maintained peace among 847 civilizations. Today, we extend our authority to Earth. President Martinez of the Earth Federation stood up slowly. We welcome peaceful contact with other civilizations. Kethfer's silver eyes showed no emotion. You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. It is an announcement of terms. He touched a device on his wrist. Above the assembly, a hologram appeared showing the galaxy itself. Thousands of star systems glowed in different colors. The red systems belong to Council member species, HFY. Explained, they enjoy our protection and advanced technology. The blue systems are restricted zones where younger species live under our guidance. You will choose which category Earth joins. The hologram zoomed in to show a dozen worlds with the same blue glow. On each planet, strange cities rose from the surface, but they all looked the same. The beings living there moved slowly, without purpose, like people who had forgotten how to dream. The blue worlds are reservation planets, Kethfer continued. Younger species live there while they learn to become civilized. Most graduate to full membership after a few thousand years. And if we refuse both options? President Martinez asked, though he already feared the answer. The hologram changed to show a dead star system. Broken planets drifted through space, like scattered bones. Species that refuse council authority are removed, Kethfer said simply. This has happened 37 times in galactic history. It is always regrettable, but sometimes necessary. The assembly hall erupted in angry voices. Representatives from every nation shouted questions and protests. Kethfer waited patiently for the noise to die down. You have 72 hours to make your choice, he said when silence returned. Every species in council history has chosen submission within this time frame. It is the logical response to overwhelming force. Secretary General Williams stood up. She was an elderly woman who had spent her life in diplomacy. What exactly would submission mean for humanity? You would relocate your population to designated worlds. Your military would be disbanded. Your technology would be restricted to approved levels. In return, you would receive our protection and guidance. And our freedom? Williams asked. Freedom is a primitive concept that leads to chaos and war. Kethfer replied, the council brings order and peace. This is better than freedom. The alien representative turned and walked toward the exit. I will return in 72 hours for your answer. Consider your choice carefully. No species has ever survived choosing defiance. As his ship lifted away from Earth, the world's leaders remained in emergency session. The debate raged for hours. Some argued for submission, pointing out the terrible cost of resistance. Others demanded that humanity fight for its independence, no matter the odds. President Martinez called for quiet. We need to think about this clearly. We've seen what happens to species that say no. We've also seen what happens to those that say yes. Those blue worlds looked like prisons to me. But we'd be alive, argued Prime Minister Singh. Our people would survive? Would they? Asked President Chun of the Asian Alliance. Those beings on the reservation worlds didn't look human anymore. They looked broken. The debate continued through the night and into the next day. Reports came in from around the world. Some cities had riots as people demanded their leaders surrender. Others had rallies calling for resistance. On the second day, a curious thing happened. A message arrived at the assembly from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist who had been studying the alien transmissions, made a disturbing discovery. I've been analyzing the signals from those blue worlds, she announced to the emergency session. The beings there aren't just restricted in their technology. Their brain patterns have been altered. They've been chemically modified to remove aggression, creativity, and independent thought. A chill fell over the assembly. The choice was even worse than they had thought. Submit and become living robots, or resist and face extinction. The 72 hours passed quickly. When Cuthfer returned to the assembly hall, he found the world's leaders waiting for him with grim faces. "Have you reached a decision?" the alien asked. President Martinez stood up. Behind him sat every elected leader on Earth. They had voted, and the result was closer than anyone wanted to admit. But democracy had spoken. "High Arbitrator Cuthfer," Martinez said formally, "we thank you for your offer, but humanity must respectfully decline." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Cuthfer showed emotion. His silver eyes widened in genuine surprise. "You choose extinction over the peace we offer?" "We choose freedom over existence without hope," Martinez replied. Cuthfer stared at the human leaders for a long moment. In 50,000 years of council expansion, no species had ever given this answer. Every civilization eventually chose survival over principle. "You do not understand what you have chosen," the alien said slowly. "But you will learn. The siege begins at dawn." As Cuthfer's ship lifted away from Earth for the final time, humanity prepared for war against impossible odds. They had chosen the hardest path, but it was the only one they could live with. The galaxy was about to discover what humans meant when they said freedom was worth any price. The Council fleet arrived at Earth's solar system like a storm made of metal and light. 200 massive ships took positions around the sun, each one larger than anything humans had ever built. They formed a perfect sphere around Earth's solar system, blocking every possible escape route. High Arbitrator Cuthfer stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Order. Through the viewing screen, he could see the small blue planet that had dared to refuse the Council's offer. It looked so peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. "Sir, should we begin the bombardment?" asked Commander Zerth, his military advisor. The reptilian officer's scales shifted color with excitement. "No," Cuthfer said calmly. "We follow standard siege protocol. Show them our power, then wait for them to surrender. It always works." The alien commander had run 43 successful sieges in his long career. Every species broke within weeks when they saw the Council's overwhelming force. Humans would be no different. On Earth, every telescope and radar dish pointed toward the sky. The alien ships were impossible to miss. Each one was a city in space, bristling with weapons and glowing with strange energy. The message was clear. Resistance was hopeless. General Patricia Hayes stood in the Pentagon's war room, studying the holographic display that showed the enemy positions. She had spent 30 years in the military, but nothing had prepared her for this. "How many ships?" she asked her aide. 200 confirmed, ma'am. Each one is at least 5 miles long. Our best estimates put their total firepower at enough to crack continents." General Hayes nodded grimly. The aliens wanted Earth to know exactly how outmatched they were. It was psychological warfare at its finest. "Any communication from them?" "Yes, ma'am. They're broadcasting the same message on all frequencies." The main screen showed Cuthfer's face. He looked tired, as if this was just another boring job. "People of Earth," the alien said in perfect English, "your leaders have made a foolish choice. You now see the power arranged against you. We will wait exactly 1 standard month for you to reconsider. During this time, nothing will enter or leave your system. Choose wisely." The broadcast ended, leaving Earth in an eerie silence. No ships moved between the planets. No signals reached the outside galaxy. Humanity was completely cut off from the universe. President Martinez called another emergency session. This time, the mood in the assembly hall was different. Fear hung in the air like smoke. Several representatives had already changed their minds about resistance. "We have to surrender," pleaded Minister Jackson from the European Federation. "Look, at those ships, we can't fight that." "If we surrender now, we lose everything," replied President Chun. "At least if we fight, We die as free people. The debate raged for hours. Outside, crowds gathered in every major city. Some demanded surrender. Others called for resistance to the end. The world had never been more divided. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood up during the session. The xenobiologist had been studying the alien transmissions since first contact. "I've learned something important," she announced. "The Council isn't trying to destroy us quickly because they want us alive. Dead species can't work in their empire. What's your point?" Asked Secretary General Williams. "They need us to surrender willingly. If they just blast Earth to pieces, they get nothing. But if they can break our will, they get another slave species." This sparked new arguments. Some saw it as hope that the aliens wouldn't actually attack. Others worried it meant the Council would find worse ways to break humanity's spirit. Answer came 3 days later. Council ships began jamming all Earth's communications satellites. Television, radio, and internet signals died across the planet. Suddenly, billions of people couldn't talk to each other except in person. Then the aliens started their broadcasts. Every screen on Earth showed the same images. Council worlds at peace, beautiful cities where different species worked together, advanced technology that had ended disease and hunger. The message was simple: this could be yours if you just say yes. But they also showed the other side. The holographic displays revealed the broken remains of worlds that had refused Council rule. Dead planets spinning in space. The skeletons of once great civilizations scattered among the stars. "This is what happens to species that choose pride over wisdom," Kethver's voice explained over the images. 37 civilizations have made the wrong choice. Their names are forgotten. Their achievements are dust. The psychological pressure was enormous. Every day, more people demanded surrender. Protests filled the streets of major cities. Some government officials resigned rather than continue the resistance. But something unexpected happened. Instead of breaking, many humans became more determined. They remembered stories their grandparents told about fighting against overwhelming odds. They thought about slaves and tyrants throughout history, and how freedom had always come at a terrible price. Small groups began working in secret. Scientists studied the alien broadcasts, looking for weaknesses. Engineers examined the enemy ships through telescopes, trying to understand their technology. Military officers planned for impossible battles. Dr. James Park, a physicist at MIT, made the first breakthrough. He noticed that the Council ships used a type of energy field to travel faster than light. By analyzing the signatures, he figured out how it worked. "It's not magic," he told his research team. "It's just physics we haven't learned yet. And if they can do it, so can we." The work began in hidden laboratories around the world. Using the alien broadcasts as a guide, human scientists started reverse engineering Council technology. Progress was slow, but it was progress. Meanwhile, the siege continued. The Council ships hung in space like patient predators, waiting for Earth to give up. On the bridge of the Eternal Order, Kethver grew increasingly puzzled. "How long has it been?" he asked Commander Zerth. 3 weeks, sir. Most species surrender. By now. Send another broadcast. Increase the pressure." The new message was harsher. The aliens showed detailed plans of how they would destroy Earth cities one by one. They displayed the exact weapons they would use. They even included a countdown timer showing how long humanity had left. 10 days, Kethver announced. "In 10 days, if you have not surrendered, we will begin orbital bombardment. Your largest cities will be destroyed first. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing. Then we will work our way down to smaller targets. This is not a threat. It is a promise." The countdown appeared on every screen on Earth. 10 days, then 9, then 8. Each passing day brought humanity closer to annihilation. But instead of surrender, something else happened. On day 7, the first human ship launched from a hidden base in the Australian desert. It was crude compared to Council technology, but it worked. The small craft used a copy of alien faster-than-light travel to slip past the siege fleet undetected. More ships followed. Tiny vessels carrying small groups of humans escaped the solar system and scattered across nearby star systems. They carried seeds, DNA samples, and everything needed to start new colonies. If Earth died, humanity would survive. The Council detected the escapes on day 5. Cuthbert stared at the reports in disbelief. How is this possible? He demanded. They don't have faster-than-light technology. They do now, sir, Commander Zarth replied nervously. Our analysis shows they copied our drive systems. For the first time in 50,000 years, a primitive species had stolen Council technology and made it work. It should have been impossible. Young civilizations didn't have the knowledge or skill to reverse engineer such complex systems, but humans had done it anyway. Kethvar realized he faced something new in galactic history. These humans weren't just refusing to surrender. They were adapting. They were learning. They were becoming dangerous. The countdown reached 0. Kethvar stood on his bridge, looking down at the small blue planet that had defied the greatest empire in the galaxy. Begin bombardment, he ordered quietly. But as the first Council weapons fired, Kethvar wondered if he had already lost something more important than a simple siege. For the first time in his long life, he felt afraid of what might come next. The war for humanity's freedom had truly begun. 3 years had passed since the first Council bombs fell on Earth. High Arbitrator Kethvar stood in his war room aboard the Eternal Order, staring at a holographic map of human space. What he saw made his ancient blood run cold. Where once there had been a single blue dot representing Earth. Now dozens of red markers showed human colonies scattered across 43 star systems. Each marker represented another failure, another place where the humans had somehow escaped his forces. Report, Kethvar ordered his intelligence officer, Commander Vexara. A tall insectoid being with multifaceted eyes clicked her mandibles. Nervously, Sir, the humans have established new colonies in the Kepler sector, the Wolf system, and 3 previously unexplored regions. They're calling this new territory the Human Federation. How many colonies now? 87 confirmed. Settlements, sir. But our scouts estimate there could be twice that number in hidden locations. Kethvar's fists clenched. The siege of Earth was supposed to have ended in days. Instead, it had become a grinding war that consumed resources and ships at an alarming rate. Even worse, other Council members were starting to ask difficult questions. The humans had proven to be unlike any enemy the Council had ever faced. They didn't fight like civilized species, with organized fleets meeting in formal battle. Instead, they struck from shadows, used tricks that violated every rule of proper warfare, and refused to stay defeated. Last month, human raiders had destroyed a Council supply depot using an asteroid. They had somehow moved and accelerated to incredible speed. The week before that, they had captured an entire Council squadron by hiding ships inside a gas giant's atmosphere. What about their technology levels? Kethvar asked. Advancing rapidly, sir. They've reverse-engineered our shield systems, improved our weapons designs, and created new ship types we've never seen before. Their latest vessels are actually faster than our own. This was the part that truly terrified Kethvar. Young species weren't supposed to be able to improve on Council technology. The Galactic Council had perfected their designs over 50,000 years. Yet somehow, these primitive humans were making them better. On the human colony of New Geneva, Admiral Sarah Chun walked through the underground command center, carved into the planet's rocky core. She had been promoted from probe mission captain the head of all human military operations. The transformation still amazed her. "Status report," she asked her aide, Colonel Martinez. He was the son of the former Earth president, and like many second-generation colonists, he had grown up knowing only war. 17 new colonies established this month, Martinez replied. The Mayflower expedition found 3 habitable worlds in the outer rim. The Prometheus group successfully established mining operations in the asteroid belt of System 47. Sarah nodded. Humanity's strategy was simple. Spread faster than the Council could track them. Every new colony was another chance for survival. Every hidden base was another thorn in the Council's side. What about weapons production? The new shipyards in the Titan system are ahead of schedule. We'll have 50 new attack ships ready for deployment next month. The scientists at Research Station Alpha have also finished testing the new plasma cannon design. Sarah smiled grimly. The plasma cannons were a human improvement on Council energy weapons. They hit harder and used less power. Small advantages like this were adding up to change the balance of the war. Any word from the infiltration teams? Team 7 successfully planted surveillance devices on 3 Council ships. Team 12 rescued another group of human prisoners from the labor camps on Zarian Prime. The rescue missions were Sarah's idea. The Council had captured thousands of humans during the early raids and sent them to work camps on various worlds. But humans had a saying, "Leave no one behind." Every rescue mission was dangerous, but they never stopped trying. On the Council world of Centauri Prime, the Galactic Assembly was meeting in emergency session. Representatives from 847 different species filled the massive chamber, but the mood was far from peaceful. What had started as a simple human problem was becoming a crisis that threatened the entire Council. High Counselor Taishan of the ancient Zephyrian Empire called for order. His blue skin had grown pale with worry over the past 3 years. "The human situation requires immediate discussion," he announced. "The siege has lasted far longer than projected and consumed more resources than anticipated." Counselor Vrektor of the hegemony of Klax stood up. His species looked like walking crystals, and his voice rang like broken glass. 3 years ago, you assured us this would be a simple matter, a demonstration of force to bring another primitive species into line. Instead, we have spent enough resources to build 1,000 new cities. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The war with humanity was bleeding the Council dry. Ships, weapons, fuel, and personnel were being consumed at rates that made even the richest worlds nervous. "The humans are more adaptable than we anticipated," Taishan admitted, "but they are still just one species. We have the combined might of nearly 1,000 civilizations." "Do we?" asked Counselor Minthara of the Twilight Confederacy. Her species had bird-like features and bright golden eyes. "How many of our member worlds have quietly reduced their contributions to this war? How many colonies have started asking why they should pay for a conflict that grows more expensive every day?" This touched on the Council's deepest fear. For 50,000 years, their empire had been held together by the promise of protection and the threat of overwhelming force. But the humans had shown that the Council could be fought. Worse, they had proven that resistance was possible. Intelligence reports were coming in from across the galaxy. On 17 different worlds, subjugated species were asking questions about independence. 3 planets had actually stopped sending tribute to the Council, claiming they needed the resources for local defense. Back in human space, the war had evolved in ways that amazed both sides. Human engineers had learned to hide entire fleets inside hollowed-out asteroids. Human tacticians had developed new battle strategies that confused Council commanders who had fought the same way for millennia. But the humans' greatest weapon wasn't technology or tactics. It was their refusal to give up. Captain James Park, son of the physicist who had first cracked Council technology, commanded the human destroyer Defiance. His ship was one of the new designs, sleek and fast, built for hit and run. Attacks. Council convoy spotted in Sector 7, reported his sensor officer. 3 heavy cruisers escorting supply ships. Attack pattern Delta, James ordered. Remember, we hit hard and fast, then disappear before they can respond. The Defiance and 5 other human ships materialized out of faster-than-light travel, right in the middle of the Council formation. Their weapons fired in perfect coordination, crippling 2 of the cruisers before the aliens could react. But instead of staying to fight, the human ships vanished again, jumping away to safety. They left behind disabled Council vessels and stolen supplies, but more importantly, they left behind fear. This was happening all across the war zone. Human ships appeared without warning, struck hard, and vanished before the Council could mount an effective response. It was a type of warfare that violated every principle the Council understood about proper military conduct. On Zentari Prime, High Counselor Taishan reviewed the latest battle reports with growing despair. The humans weren't winning in any traditional sense. They had fewer ships, less territory, and smaller numbers than the Council. But they weren't losing either. Every month that passed, humanity grew stronger. Every successful raid brought them new technology and resources. Every rescued prisoner became another soldier in their growing army. How is this possible? Taishan asked his military advisor, General Kor Vex. They're primitives. They should have surrendered or died by now. Sir, I believe we fundamentally misunderstood what we were facing, the general replied. These humans don't think like other species. Where we see hopeless odds, they see a challenge. Where we see the logic of surrender, they see the necessity of resistance. The truth was becoming clear to the Council leadership, though few wanted to admit it. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had turned the Council's greatest strength into a weakness. For 50,000 years, the Council had ruled through fear of their overwhelming power. But the humans had shown that power could be fought, avoided, and even defeated through cleverness and determination. As reports came in of yet another human victory. This time, a daring raid that had freed an entire planet of political prisoners. Taishan realized the horrible truth. The Council wasn't just fighting a war against humanity. They were fighting a war against the idea that freedom was possible. And ideas, as they were learning, were much harder to kill than ships or planets out in the depths of space. Human colonies continued to multiply like seeds in fertile soil. Each new world was another chance for humanity's children to grow up free. Each successful battle was another proof that even the mightiest empires could be challenged. The war that was supposed to end in days had become a struggle that would reshape the galaxy. And humanity, despite all odds, was not just surviving. They were winning. 5 years into the war, the first crack in the Galactic Council appeared in the most unexpected place. The Minervan Collective, a peaceful trading federation of 12 worlds, announced they were withdrawing all ships from the human conflict. Ambassador Tel-Ora of the Minervans stood before the Galactic Assembly with her 4 arms crossed in a gesture of finality. Her purple skin had darkened with stress, and her large eyes showed the exhaustion that many council members now felt. "We can no longer justify the cost," she declared to the shocked assembly. "Our worlds have contributed 47 ships and 10,000 personnel to this war. We have lost 18 ships and 3,000 lives. For what? To force one species to accept our protection?" High Counselor Taishan rose from his seat, his ancient face twisted with anger. "You dare question 5 decades of successful council? Policy? I question a policy that has cost us more in 5 years than the previous century of expansion," Tel-Ora replied firmly. "The humans are not attacking our worlds. They are not threatening our trade routes. They simply want to be left alone. The assembly erupted in heated debate. Other representatives began voicing similar concerns. The Aquatic Confederation mentioned their growing fleet maintenance costs. The Silicon Brotherhood complained about supply shortages. The Verdant Alliance questioned why they were fighting beings who had never threatened them. For the first time in galactic history, member species were openly criticizing a council military action. High Arbitrator Kethfer watched the proceedings from his private viewing chamber. His silver eyes had lost their cold confidence, replaced by something approaching desperation. The simple siege that should have ended in days had become a nightmare that consumed everything he touched. The humans had done more than resist, had inspired doubt in the very foundations of council authority. That doubt was spreading like a virus throughout the galaxy. On the human colony world of New Sparta, Admiral Sarah Chun received news that changed everything. Intelligence Officer Williams rushed into her command center with a datapad clutched in her shaking hands. "Ma'am, you need to see this immediately," Williams said. "We've intercepted council communications from 3 different sectors." Sarah took the pad and read the translated messages. Her eyes widened with each line. "The Altarian Republic has declared independence?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. They announced they're no longer sending tribute to the Council. They've also asked for our assistance in defending their worlds." Sarah scrolled through more messages. The Altarians weren't alone. The Tau Ceti Union had stopped cooperating with Council authorities. The free colonies of Kepler had ejected all Council representatives from their space. "How many worlds are we talking about?" Sarah asked. 17 systems have declared independence in the past month. Another 43 have reduced their cooperation with Council authorities. The movement is spreading faster than Council forces can respond. Sarah sat down heavily in her chair. When humanity had first refused the Council's ultimatum, they had been alone in the galaxy. Now, dozens of worlds were following their example. The idea of resistance was contagious. On the Council world of Zirion Prime, Planetary Governor Mexif faced a crisis that would have been unthinkable 5 years earlier. His world's native population, the peaceful Zirians, had organized themselves into something they called a freedom movement. The Zirians had been under Council rule for 800 years. They had accepted their status as a subjugated species without question, working in the mines and factories that fed the Council war machine. But lately, they had been asking dangerous questions. Why do we work for them? The questions began. What gives them the right to rule us? If humans can fight back, why can't we? Governor Mexif stood on his palace balcony, looking down at crowds of Zirians gathering in the streets below. They carried signs written in their native language, but the meaning was clear in any tongue. Freedom for Zarian and end Council rule. His communications officer approached nervously. "Sir, we have similar reports from 11 other Council worlds. The administrators are requesting military support to maintain order." "What does High Command say?" Mexif asked. A single quotes read ... "Unavailable. Sir, all Council fleets are committed to the human conflict." This was the Council's greatest nightmare coming true. For 50,000 years, they had maintained control through the promise of protection and the threat of overwhelming retaliation. But now their forces were spread thin across human space, fighting a war they couldn't win, but couldn't afford to lose. The subjugated species across the galaxy were beginning to realize they outnumbered their rulers by millions to 1 inhuman. Space, the war had evolved beyond simple military conflict. Human scientists had not only matched Council technology, but were beginning to surpass it in key areas. The newest human ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Council. H.A. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now head of the Human Scientific Coalition, made daily breakthroughs that shocked even her own people. In her laboratory on Research Station Prometheus, She studied captured Council technology with an enthusiasm that bordered on obsession. The problem with Council designs, she explained to her research team, is that they haven't had real competition. In 50,000 years, their technology has stagnated. They build things the same way because nobody ever forced them to innovate. Her latest creation was a new type of ship drive that could jump between star systems without the charging time Council drives required. Human ships could now appear anywhere instantly, strike, and vanish before the enemy could respond. We're not just winning battles, Dr. Vasquez continued. We're leapfrogging ahead of them technologically. Give us another 5 years, and we'll be building things they can't even understand. But the humans' greatest achievement wasn't technological. It was diplomatic. Captain Maria Santos commanded the human cruiser Liberation. Her mission was unlike anything in military history. She was liberating Council prison worlds and recruiting new allies for humanity's cause. Her current target was the penal colony of Grimrock, where the Council sent political prisoners from across the galaxy. The planet was guarded by only a small garrison, most of the Council fleet being tied up in other conflicts. The Liberation materialized in orbit without warning. Santos' crew quickly disabled the orbital defense platforms. Wow. Assault teams landed on the surface. This is Captain Santos of the Human Federation. She broadcast to the prison camps below. We're here to offer you freedom. Anyone who wants to leave this place is welcome to join us. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of beings from dozens of different species rushed to the human landing sites. They were rebels, free thinkers, and independence activists who had been imprisoned for daring to question Council authority. Among them was someone special, former Council Admiral Vextal of the Andromedian League. He had been imprisoned for refusing to bombard a civilian population during a previous Council pacification operation. Why are you doing this? Vextal asked Santos as the Liberation prepared to leave Grimrock. Because nobody should be imprisoned. For wanting freedom, Santos replied. And because we need allies who understand how the Council really works. Vextal studied the human captain with new respect. His species had served the Council for 3,000 years, but they had never been offered true partnership. The humans were treating him as an equal, not a subject. What do you need me to do? He asked. Back on Centauri Prime, the Council leadership faced a crisis that threatened to tear their empire apart. Intelligence reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Rebellion was spreading like wildfire from system to system. High Counselor Taishan called an emergency meeting of the Inner Circle, the most powerful Council members. The chamber was half empty, many representatives having been recalled to deal with problems in their own territories. The situation is worse than we thought, Taishan announced. 73 worlds have now declared independence. Another 150 have stopped sending tribute. Entire sectors are falling out of our control. General Corvex provided the military assessment. Sir, we simply don't have enough ships to maintain the siege of human space and suppress rebellions across the galaxy. If we pull forces from the human front, they'll expand even faster. If we don't, we'll lose half our territory to local independence movements. What about negotiating with the humans? Suggested Counselor Minthara. Perhaps we can reach some accommodation. The suggestion was met with horrified silence. The Council had never negotiated with a species as equals. The very idea violated everything they stood for. But Taishan was beginning to realize they might not have a choice. High Arbitrator Kethfor received the summons to return to Centauri Prime with a mixture of relief and dread. His 5-year siege of humanity had accomplished nothing except bleeding the Council white. He had lost more ships to human raids than he had destroyed. Worse, every day brought news of fresh rebellions inspired by human resistance. As his flagship jumped to faster-than-light travel for the journey home, Kethver reflected on the impossible situation. The humans had done something no military strategist had thought possible. They had turned their weakness into strength by inspiring others. To fight, the galaxy was burning with the fire of independence, and humanity had. 10 years after first contact, High Arbitrator Kethvar stood in the ruins of the once mighty council chambers on Centauri Prime. Half the seats in the great assembly hall sat empty. Representatives who had once commanded fleets and ruled Star systems were gone, recalled to defend their own crumbling territories. The holographic display at the center of the chamber told the story of complete disaster. Where once the galaxy had been painted in council blue, now vast swaths of space glowed with the colors of independence. Red markers showed human-controlled territory that now spanned 200 star systems. Green dots marked the 47 species that had declared independence and successfully defended it. Yellow indicated the 73 worlds that had stopped acknowledging council authority entirely. Only a small core of blue remained around the galaxy's center, and even that was shrinking daily. High Counselor Tyshawn looked like he had aged 1,000 years in the past decade. His blue skin had turned pale gray, and his once confident voice now carried the weight of absolute defeat. "The final reports," he announced to the scattered remains of the assembly. "The Minervan Collective has formally allied with the Human Federation. The Altarian Republic has joined what they're calling the Free Galaxy Alliance. Even our oldest members are questioning their loyalty." Kethver listened to the litany of failures with growing numbness. Every world that fell was a personal defeat. Every successful rebellion was proof that his life's work had been built on lies. The humans had done the impossible. They had shown the galaxy that the Council's empire was nothing more than a house of cards, held together by fear and tradition. When enough people stopped being afraid, the whole structure collapsed. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Yerdan, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're requesting permission to approach Centauri Prime." "They're what?" Tyshawn asked in disbelief. "They say they want to negotiate and end the war." The irony wasn't lost on anyone present. The humans, who had been threatened with extinction 10 years ago, were now in a position to dictate terms to their former oppressors. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Human Federation, flagship Unity, as it approached the Council's home world. The massive ship was one of the new super dreadnoughts, larger and more advanced than anything the Council had ever built. Around it, a fleet of 200 human vessels maintained perfect formation. But this wasn't a fleet coming to destroy. It was a fleet coming to heal. "Receiving docking clearance from Centauri Prime," reported Communications Officer Park. "They're directing us to the diplomatic landing area." Sarah nodded. After 10 years of war, she was tired of fighting. Humanity had proven their point. They had shown the galaxy that freedom was possible, that even the mightiest empire could be resisted and defeated. Now it was time to build something better. The Unity landed on the crystalline surface of Centauri Prime's capital spaceport. Sarah walked down the ramp, accompanied by representatives from dozens of former Council species. Humans, Altarians, Minervans, Xerians, and many others stood together as equals. They were met by a small delegation of Council officials, led by a figure Sarah recognized from old intelligence files. High Arbitrator Kethver looked nothing like the confident alien who had delivered humanity's ultimatum 10 years ago. His silver eyes held defeat and something that might have been respect. "Admiral Chun," Kethver said formally, "you have come. Far from the probe captain who first discovered our space." "We all have," Sarah replied. "The question now is where we go from here." The negotiations took place in the same chamber where humanity had first been ordered to surrender. But the roles were completely reversed. Now it was the Council that faced extinction, their empire reduced to a handful of core worlds. Surrounded by hostile neighbors and former subjects, Kethver sat across from Sarah at the negotiating table. With him were the few remaining council, leaders who still held any real power. On Sarah's side sat representatives from the Free Galaxy Alliance, the coalition of independent worlds that had formed around humanity's example. "Our terms are simple," Sarah began. "Complete dissolution of the Galactic Council as a governing body. All subjugated species to be granted immediate independence. All political prisoners to be released. All military forces to be disbanded except for local defense fleets." "You're asking us to destroy ourselves," Taishan protested weakly. "No," replied Ambassador Vextel, the former Council Admiral who now served as humanity's diplomatic advisor. "We're asking you to transform yourselves, to become what you always claimed to be, protectors instead of oppressors." Sarah leaned forward. "The galaxy doesn't need an empire. It needs cooperation between equals. We're proposing a new organization, the Galactic Federation. Every species gets one vote, regardless of size or power. Decisions are made by consensus, not force." "And if we refuse?" Kethver asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then you'll face the same choice you once gave us," Sarah said quietly. "Submit to a new order, or face the consequences of standing alone against a united galaxy." The difference was clear to everyone present. Humanity had faced that choice when they were weak and isolated. The Council now faced it when they were defeated and surrounded by enemies of their own making. For 3 days, the Council leadership debated behind closed doors. Outside, the capital city of Centauri Prime was strangely quiet. The alien citizens watched the sky nervously, knowing that their entire way of life hung in the balance. On the 4th day, Taishan returned to the negotiating chamber. His ancient shoulders were bent with the weight of 50,000 years of failed policy. "We accept your terms," he said simply. The formal signing ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Species that had never been allowed to speak now had voices in galactic affairs. Worlds that had been forced to serve others now governed themselves. The age of empires was ending, replaced by something unprecedented. A galaxy of free peoples choosing to work together. Kethvar signed the dissolution documents with hands that shook slightly. As he set down the stylus, he looked up at Sarah. "Sean, I still don't understand," he said. "How did you do it? How did one small species bring down an empire that lasted 50,000 years?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "You made a mistake that every empire in history has made. You believe that power comes from the ability to force others to obey. But real power comes from inspiring others to choose cooperation. We offered you peace and prosperity," Kethver protested. "You offered us slavery disguised as protection," Sarah replied. "There's a difference between helping someone and controlling them. You never learned that difference." As the ceremony concluded, representatives from hundreds of worlds celebrated the birth of the Galactic Federation. But Sarah felt no triumph, only exhaustion and hope. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Building a galaxy, based on freedom and cooperation, would be harder than destroying an empire based on fear and force. There would be disagreements, conflicts, and failures. Some species would struggle with the concept of self-governance after millennia of being ruled by others. But for the first time in galactic history, every species would have the chance to determine their own destiny. Years later, historians would study the fall of the Galactic Council and puzzle over how such a powerful empire could collapse so quickly. They would write books about military tactics and technological advances, about economic factors and political movements. But Sarah knew the real answer was simpler than any of them imagined. Humanity had won because they remembered something the galaxy had forgotten, that freedom was not a gift to be granted by others, but a right to be claimed by oneself. When enough people remembered that truth, no empire could stand against it. The galaxy was free because one small blue planet had looked into the face of overwhelming power and said the most dangerous words in any language. No, thank you. In the end, that was all it took. The courage to say no when saying yes would be easier. The determination to stand up when staying down would be safer. The faith that freedom was worth any price, including death itself. The galaxy had learned that from humanity. And the galaxy would never forget Dot as the human fleet prepared to leave Centauri Prime. Cuthbert watched from his office window. The ships that had once been his enemies were now protectors of the peace they had all helped create. For the first time in his long life, Cuthbert smiled. Perhaps the humans had been right all along. Perhaps freedom really was better than the alternative. Age of Empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun.